Today, we are going to explore the user interface. User interface, or UI for short, is the interaction between the user, you, and your personal computer. For example, the screen that you see here is the user interface for Blender, and this is what we are going to dive into. Now, before we begin, let's go ahead and download Blender onto our machine. So let's go ahead and install this program. Go to your preferred internet browser, type blender.org. There you will be introduced to the Blender website. They are constantly updating the application. Their big goal right now is Blender 3.0. Currently they're at Blender 2.93.4 LTS, so that is what we're going to be working with. So click on the download link on the right side, the blue rectangle over there. And once the download is complete, open the file and follow the steps. Now, the nice thing about it is while you are in the installation process, you can find out if you have enough mech space to install Blender. And before you continue, you could click on the side and it'll give you the individual drives, how many that you have, and you go easily put on whichever drive that fits your needs. Once the installation is complete, open Blender and you will be greeted with a splash page. For those opening up the program for the first time, you should be given the option of what sort of layout you wish to have for your setup. Personally, I'd go with the dark background template as it helps with my eyes. As for navigating through Blender, there is an option that says shortcuts. Open that tab and you'll see down on the bottom the option Industry Compatible. Select that. That option aligns Blender to use industry standard key functions. So when you may end up using another 3D application, it will mitigate the jarring issue of navigating through the program and having to completely relearn from zero. Blender is capable of emulating other 3D packages in terms of user interface functions, but we will not explore that at this time. If by chance you missed the options, or want to try Blender using its default functions but do not like it, you can access industry compatible option function through Preferences, Key Map, and on the top is a table that may say Blender or Blender 27X. Pull that tab down and you should see Industry Compatible and select that. Now that is established, let's talk about the UI itself. Okay, this is the UI. There is a lot of items on this UI, this workspace. A lot of things to click on, a lot of things to mess with. A lot of stuff going on, but do not panic. Everything has a rhyme, everything has a reason, but we are basically just going to work on just the basic stuff, the groundwork stuff, just the beginning stuff. When more videos are created, then we'll start looking at the more specific items, and then the more complex and more complicated items, which also have their own set of options and own set of tools that will pretty much create the magic. But let's go ahead and talk about this row here. You have your splash page and about Blender, the systems, and then over it is your file, edit, render, window, help, and the other key features of Blender being the layout, modeling, and sculpting, and several others. But below that, we are going to be focusing on these items here. So while we're focusing on these items here, let me go ahead and probably explain more of navigating in Blender, or navigating in a 3D package, and specifically Blender. So say, if you see this cube here and you want to, zoom in on the cube or zoom out, well, to zoom in on it is you use your middle mouse wheel, which will help you zoom in and zoom out. That's the middle mouse wheel. But then if you want to rotate your camera to look on the other side, you hold down Alt and then left mouse button. and it's rotating, and you're able to see different angles. Now, if you want to panning being left and right, up and down, well, you go ahead and hold down Alt again, and then you hold down middle mouse wheel or middle mouse button. Hold it down, and you are able to pan upward, left, different directions. And that way you're able to go ahead and inspect your cube or your polygon. You go ahead and inspect it, see different directions. So that is that out of the way. Let's go ahead and talk about these items here. This here is your select box. Select box, select items using select box selection. And the nice thing about it, it has a shortcut key. Shortcut key is being used as far as if you have a workflow or pipeline that you're working with, and you just want to just cut down on steps to select various things. Now, in small demonstration, hold down left mouse button, and you're selecting. I'm gonna do it again. Hold down left mouse button, selecting the cube, and it selects it. You see this highlighted, but we'll talk about that later. So below that is your cursor. Now, cursor, set the cursor location, then drag to transform. So we're gonna go ahead and select the cursor location. We're gonna go ahead and select that. Now, while that is selected, I'm gonna go ahead and speak about these little items here. Your view, which has its own set of options in terms of dealing with your view. I'll just go ahead and select one. Your perspective view, orthographic view. That kind of changes, how you look through your 3D workspace. And then selecting, which is select all, none, select the invert. That comes in, especially if you're like doing some modeling. Later videos will definitely do some modeling stuff, whereas doing various selections will come into play. But now that we're over at adding is basically if you want to add a mesh or a curve or a surface, metal ball, tons of options. We're going to go ahead and add a cube. Now, when I add this cube, originally the cube will be at the center here because the 3D cursor was here at the center. But since I moved the cursor over here, the cube is actually going to be here. So let's go ahead and create the cube. And now the cube is here. Now, here's another neat thing about the 3D cursor. If you notice the little bounding box yellow icon, that is basically like the center of the pivot point of the cube. Whenever you create an object, every object will have this little yellow dot. So currently right now, I'm going to go ahead and move forward, but we'll go back to the 3D cursor because I want to show you something cool later on. So moving ahead or move forward, move selected items, shortcut cycle W, and you're able to move it up to one side, move it upward, and you're able to move it on the 3 axes, X, Y, and Z. And same thing as far as the little red, blue, and green boxes, respectively, being able to move it at a certain direction. Like so. Or freely, if you click within the white radius, you can just move it all over the place. Now, the rotation is pretty much similar. Rotation being rotate selected items, shortcut cycle E. And pretty similar. If you notice the theme of the red, green, and blue axes, being able to select it and move it like so, select it again, using the green, using the blue, or you could just select on the outside area and be able to rotate it like so. I'm doing all this with the left mouse button, holding it down and then just doing it like so. Now, here's where we go back to the 3D cursor. With the 3D cursor, The other neat thing that you could do with it is, you see this transform pivot point right now is at bounding box center. We're going to change the pivot point to around the 3D cursor. You notice how the rotation moves from the bounding box center to the 3D cursor. So now that it's moved here, and when I rotate, it's going to be rotating around like so. Pretty neat, huh? Pretty cool stuff. So we're gonna go ahead and change that back. Now the next item is scale. Scaling is scaling it from this direction, scaling it from this direction, or on the outside, or yeah, this direction or this direction. I'll do it again with this cube. This way or this way, and you could Control Z, undoing things. You could Control Z to make it turn it back to normal. But the other nice thing about, if you want to scale it with proportion, the way you do that is to hold down left click here on the outside area and then scale it in proportion, and it could expand or it could shrink to whatever size you want. But then if you want to like scale and move and rotate all at the same time, that's where transform comes in. Transform comes in, which gives you all these things all at once, and it's for people that want to just further streamline things. Now it's nice to have all these options at once, but do be careful, because if you're moving something and you do it too quickly, say you want to rotate something, you just want to rotate it, but then you accidentally size it, that could happen, and you just be careful. You have other options like annotate, make annotations on the active data, measurements, measure the distance and angles, tweak left anywhere for a new measurement, drag ruler segment to measure the angle, important stuff. But then this new feature, or this new item in 3.93.4 LTS, is adding cone here. Now earlier I added a cube here, which you can add a cone from here as well too, but they have given you an option to create adding cones, adding cubes, cylinders, spheres here as well too. And to do that, let's say we're gonna add a cone. It gives you like this little gray radius as far as the location. Hold down left click and drag it out. Now I'm still holding down the left click, and you notice how it's kind of ovulating like so. Now if I want to like make it proportional, hold down the shift key, and then if you're still holding down the shift key, it'll give you a cubed proportional cone. But let's let go of the shift key and just rise the cone up like so. Now I got a cone. Let's make another one. This one's gonna be cube proportion. I'm gonna hold down shift and then move my left mouse button to the side while holding out left mouse button, and then still holding out shift, and then I let go, and then I press, and then I got another cone. Say, what if I want to duplicate something? Well, if I select something, I press Control C and then Control V, and now I duplicated something, and now I got two cubes. So that option is there too. Like some, in a way, it kind of incorporates some of the other universal ideas of from Adobe package or Microsoft Word, like the Control Z's, the redos, the duplicates, and that's there too. So you don't have to like really extra learn something that is already really useful in a universal sense. So it's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I'm kind of glad that Blender has incorporated those things in there. So now that has been established, let's look over to this direction here. Viewport shading. These are the viewport shadings. You have your wireframe, which kind of like shows the wireframe of your objects. Pretty good if you want to look at the topology of your object. And then you also have, your solid viewport or viewpoint. And then next one over, material preview. Now we don't have any materials on deck, but that will come later. And that's if you want to look at a material or texture of an object, that's where that viewport comes in. But then the next one over that is viewport shading render, and this is where the lighting comes in terms of rendering the shadows, the lighting, and everything else. Now, before I click on this is the lighting that I was speaking about. I'm going to move over here, and now I'm going to go ahead and click on it. See, you notice the difference of how the lighting is on one side and the shadows on another. And if I were to move it in another direction, the lighting and shadows move with it, and it's calculating all that in real time. So that comes in when you want to start building a scene and you have multiple lights and render some awesome landscape. That's where those options come in. So we're gonna go ahead and put this back on solid. And over on the right side, you have your scene collections, your camera, all selected, and then your cones, all multiple cones, multiple cubes, and then of course your light. Now, the scene collection has a lot of various uses, but just for now, if you want to say, I just want to focus on one of the cubes, I'm gonna just go ahead and now look at everything else. Yeah, see that? See that eyeball? How I just clicked off of everything else? But I don't want to do that entirely, so I'll just go ahead and just click on it. Now I got that cube by itself, and that also includes disabling render, but that's the purpose for that. So on the bottom, the next thing would be all this stuff here. Now this, we'll just go ahead and just talk about it very, very briefly. We're not gonna go into detail because I still want to at least keep this on a basic level. When more videos come into play and more different things come into play, then this stuff will start mattering. But this will just be brief summary. This right here is active tool in your workspace setting, render properties, output properties, view layer properties, scene properties, world properties, object properties. Now, we'll touch on this just a little bit. Object properties is kind of it's giving you a number in terms of what is where. Like this cube here. Let's move this cube to the side. You notice how the numbers are going crazy of where I'm moving it? Now, if I want to just center it back, I'll just go ahead and type it in there. There's probably a faster way of doing it. I will find out eventually. But now it's centered, and you see how it's kind of calculated in terms of location, rotation, different modes. That's where object properties comes in. Tons of options, but we'll talk about that far later. Modifier properties, same thing. A lot of stuff to cover, but that'll be in later videos. And particle properties, physics properties, object constraint properties, object data properties, material properties, and texture properties. And just to circle everything back down here, this here is kind of like the animation area. This is your animation pool, which it calls editor type, 3D viewport, and you have all this here. But currently right now is just it's kind of in the animation playback area mode. You have your playback, which has these options, and your keying and view and marker. But just to give a small demonstration of what what you can do with it. This here is the timeline, and within the timeline you have 60 frames of animation. Now, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this cube move at a random direction. And to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select auto keying. Now that auto key is turned on, I'm going to give it a small joke. There's a way of doing this properly, but since I gave it a small joke, it has created a keyframe here. And the keyframe looks very similar to, say, the yellow diamond keyframe that you probably see in Adobe Premiere or After Effects or several other video editing packages. So that keyframe is here, and I'm going to go ahead and move it to frame 60 and move the cube over here. Auto key is on. It's kind of like a reminder, and now it's moved. So now that it's played, you have jump to endpoint, which that's the endpoint here, and then that's the other endpoint there, and then jump to the keyframe. Well, those are only 2 keyframes, but whenever you click on those, it'll jump from one keyframe to the next. So now let's go ahead and play it. Play the video. See, it's playing the video of the animation in order. So that's the one thing I wanted to show you. And I guess I will go ahead and conclude the video here. So I hope this was very informative. I hope what I spoke of what gives you a glimpse as far as what you could do with Blender. And I encourage you to just experiment and get further comfortable and familiarized with the UI, with the things that I showed you, and just be mindful of the buttons that you press, and really just get your feet wet. Don't be afraid. Don't be worried too much. And if you by chance you end up being a bit confused, just look at the video again. Or if you're still have questions, you can actually reach me through Instagram. Instagram/nwida1, and I would be more than happy to give you an answer. If I can't answer outright, then I will find the research and point you to the person or document that will answer. That'll give you the answer. The nice thing about Blender is that not only is it's continuing to be updated, the Blender community is very, very active as far as finding solutions and creating more and more tools to make the 3D package every powerful every single day, off of every iteration, off of every version. Is a really nice thing to see. So that's that concludes the video. Next one, we are going to do a little bit of creating, or bit more of an exercise in terms of creating something, and that's going to delve into more of vocabulary and a little bit of exercises in terms of modeling. So that is all for today, and I thank every single one of you for looking at the video. If you have a comment, whatever criticism, feel free to type it in, and I'll definitely take a look at it, and I will see to approve it, make further improvements on the next video. On that note, take care everybody. I will see you on the next one.